You have been running from a predator you cannot see. For years, you have felt the heavy, creeping sensation of a shadow looming over your daily life, a silent force draining your resources and energy. Society calls it debt, wrapping it in moral judgment and sterile financial terms like student loans and credit balances. But to your nervous system, this negative net worth is not a spreadsheet. It is a living, breathing, biological threat that triggers the exact same survival instincts as a predator in the wild. You are not alone if you have spent years believing that this burden was a permanent flaw in your character. But the reality is far more logical, and today, we are going to observe the moment that predator finally starves, the moment your ecosystem reaches a perfect, quiet equilibrium. You wake up on an ordinary morning, open your accounts, and the number staring back at you is a perfect, uninterrupted 0. There are no fireworks, no congratulatory parades, and no cakes baked in your honor to mark the occasion. The silence of this victory is deafening, yet it is the most profound biological relief you will ever experience.
But what you are seeing right now is not at all what it seems to the untrained eye. This 0 is not an empty space, and the path you took to get here is hiding secrets that most people will never understand. To understand the magnitude of this quiet superpower, we must first examine the environment that infected you with this negative balance in the first place. Think about the advice you were given at the age of 18, a time when your prefrontal cortex was still actively developing its capacity for long-term risk assessment. We hand teenagers the equivalent of financial venom, telling them to blindly sign their future away for an education, and then we judge them harshly when the toxicity of compound interest builds up in their lives. Why do we normalize trapping young minds in a cycle of survival, forcing them to carry a burden they barely understood when they accepted it? Tell me in the comments if you feel that your early 20s was stolen by a system that actively profits from your guilt and confusion. Perhaps you are thinking right now, this is an interesting perspective, but why should I care about the biology of my bank account? That is a perfectly fair question to ask. The truth is that understanding the science behind your debt removes the shame that has been artificially attached to it. When your net worth is in the negative, your body operates in a constant state of low-grade cortisol release, a stress hormone designed to keep you alert to physical danger. You are not weak or undisciplined. You are simply a creature trying to navigate a highly unnatural environment filled with invisible traps. The journey out of the negative is rarely a cinematic sequence of triumph. Instead, it begins with small, often frustrating behavioral adaptations that feel insignificant in the moment. You sit down at your kitchen table and begin to map out your resources, creating a budget that might look chaotic to an outsider. To the untrained eye, this complex tracking of every single expense might resemble a messy, dirty spiderweb stretching across the corners of your life. But we know better, because this intricate web is actually your highly advanced biological security system, designed to catch leaks and capture resources. Just as a misunderstood predator builds its web in the dark to restore balance to its environment, you began to quietly restructure your financial habitat. You set up automated payments to attack the principal balances while you slept. These automated transfers became your dedicated cleaners, the night shift getting to work while the rest of the world rested oblivious to your struggle. They are the unsung heroes of your financial ecosystem, meticulously scrubbing away the toxic accumulation of interest day after day, month after month. You learn to trust these silent systems, allowing them to perform their vital function without constant anxious supervision. Before you pull away in frustration at how slow the progress feels, look closer at the mechanics of what is actually happening. Every time you directed extra capital toward the debt, you were physically shrinking the habitat of the predator. You were reducing the surface area upon which the compound interest could multiply. It is a war of attrition, fought in absolute silence, requiring a level of endurance that goes completely unrecognized by a society obsessed with visible wealth. The fact that nobody noticed your struggle is not a sign of your insignificance, it is proof of your masterful stealth. This isolated journey often feels like wandering through an endless, barren landscape where your efforts yield no immediate fruit. Your peers might be purchasing new vehicles, upgrading their living spaces, and displaying the bright, colourful plumage of consumer credit. Meanwhile, you are funneling your resources into an invisible black hole, watching a negative number simply become slightly less negative. It is entirely natural to feel a sense of profound fatigue during this phase, questioning if the invisible work will ever matter. But the quiet transformation happening beneath the surface is building a resilience that the brightly plumaged consumers will never possess. The moment you finally cross the threshold from negative to zero is a physiological event as much as a financial one. The chronic cortisol drip stops, the invisible weight is lifted from your shoulders, and your nervous system takes its first true breath in a decade.
If this shift in perspective has brought you some clarity and relief, please consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue to restore justice to your financial ecosystem together. We are building a community that values the quiet strength of true independence over the loud illusion of borrowed status. And your presence here is a testament to the power of that quiet strength. Reaching zero is not the end of the story. It is merely the clearing of the contaminated soil before the real growth can begin. You have spent years digging yourself out of a deep trench, and standing on level ground might initially feel disorienting. You might even experience a strange emptiness, a phenomenon where the sudden absence of a familiar threat leaves you feeling directionless. This is a well-documented psychological response, the echo of a survival mechanism that has not yet realized the war is over. Your brain has been hardwired to fight the debt, and now it must learn a completely new set of behaviors. The absolute peace you feel is the sound of an ecosystem finally functioning exactly as nature intended. Your income is no longer being siphoned away by external parasites. Every resource you gather now belongs entirely to you and your future. The silence is deafening because the machinery of your anxiety has finally been shut down, leaving a vast, quiet space in your mind. This space is your new superpower, a clarity of thought that allows you to make decisions based on desire and strategy rather than pure, desperate survival. Nobody around you understands this shift because they cannot see the chains that you have just broken. From this point forward, the mechanics of compound interest, which once acted as a relentless parasite feeding on your future, will be tamed and converted into a symbiotic ally. The very mathematical forces that kept you trapped in the negative will now be harnessed to accelerate your growth into the positive. This requires a profound mental pivot, shifting from a defensive posture of constant protection to an expansive mindset of cautious growth. The habits you forged in the dark, the meticulous tracking, and the delayed gratification are the exact tools required to cultivate a thriving, resilient financial landscape.
As you walk through the world with a net worth of zero, you possess an invisible armor that money cannot buy. When a crisis hits, when the economic climate shifts, you are no longer a fragile organism on the brink of collapse. You are a highly adaptable survivor who knows exactly how to navigate scarcity and emerge intact. You do not need the validation of external markers because the most profound victory of your life has already been secured in absolute silence. You are the architect of your own peace, and the quiet zero on your screen is the ultimate proof of your quiet, unstoppable power. Let us observe the life cycle of the debt parasite in its natural environment. It usually attaches itself to a host during the vulnerable transition period between adolescence and adulthood. The host is typically unaware of the danger, blinded by the vibrant promises of academic success and future prosperity. The parasite lies dormant at first, slowly weaving its roots into the host's financial future during the years of study.
It is only when the host enters the workforce that the parasite awakens, demanding its regular nourishment in the form of mandatory monthly payments. The true danger of this organism lies in its reproductive cycle, a mechanism we call compound interest. If the host is unable to provide the full requested nourishment, the parasite instantly replicates, adding the unpaid portion to its own mass. This creates an unnatural biological loop where the host works harder and harder, yet the parasite continues to grow larger and more demanding. It is a brilliantly ruthless evolutionary design, ensuring that the host remains constantly engaged in the labor of feeding the attachment. Many human beings spend their entire adult lives unknowingly acting as a dedicated food source for these invisible entities. But nature always provides a countermeasure, a method of resistance that can turn the tide of this silent invasion. The process of breaking the cycle requires the host to adopt behaviors that seem entirely counterintuitive to the rest of the herd. While the herd engages in performative consumption, masking their own parasitic infections with bright displays of artificial wealth, the resistant host chooses the path of invisibility. They withdraw from the competitive displays, conserving their energy and resources to mount a sustained biological defense. This withdrawal is often misinterpreted by the herd as failure, when in reality, it is the highest form of tactical survival. You might wonder why society continues to encourage the herd to willingly accept these parasitic attachments. The answer lies in the complex symbiotic relationship between the predators and the broader economic ecosystem. The entire structure relies on the constant, predictable labor of infected hosts to keep the machinery moving. If every individual suddenly achieved a state of zero debt, the artificial acceleration of the environment would collapse. Therefore, the culture continuously broadcasts signals that normalize the infection, convincing the hosts that carrying a parasite is a necessary and unavoidable part of reaching maturity. Breaking free from this grand illusion requires a profound shedding of the skin you have worn for years. You must unlearn the language of lack and stop viewing yourself through the distorted lens of your negative balance. During the final months of your repayment journey, the resistance of the parasite becomes increasingly desperate. It throws unexpected obstacles in your path, a sudden medical expense, a mechanical failure of your vehicle, an unexpected shift in your income. These are the stress tests of the ecosystem, challenging the structural integrity of the biological security system you have so painstakingly built. But you do not falter, because you are no longer the naive host that originally accepted the infection. You have evolved into a hardened, strategic organism capable of withstanding severe environmental shocks. The automated cleaners working the night shift continue their relentless assault on the principal balance. The messy spiderweb of your budget captures every stray resource, funneling it directly toward the eradication of the threat. The battle is fought in the silent, dark corners of your accounts, completely hidden from the bright, noisy reality of the world outside. Think about the sheer amount of vital energy that was previously diverted to sustaining your debt. Every hour you worked, a significant portion of your physical and mental labor was instantly confiscated. You were effectively a tenant in your own life, paying an exorbitant rent just for the privilege of existing in a state of constant, low-grade panic. The transition to a net worth of exactly zero is the moment you finally evict the landlord of your mind. You take full ownership of your cognitive resources, claiming the right to direct your energy entirely toward your own biological thriving. When the final payment is initiated, the digital transaction takes merely a few seconds to process. But in those few seconds, a decade of invisible chains dissolves into the ether. The system registers the transfer, the balance drops, and the parasite is permanently eradicated from your ecosystem. There is no triumphant music playing from the heavens, and the people passing by you on the street have absolutely no idea that a monumental victory has just occurred. You are still wearing the same clothes, you are still driving the same vehicle, but the structural reality of your existence has been fundamentally rewritten. So, as you go to sleep tonight, let the profound reality of your zero wash over you like a calming, rhythmic tide. The night shift is no longer fighting a desperate battle for survival.
The dedicated biological cleaners have completed their monumental task, and the intricate spider web of your budget has successfully caught the final fragments of your past mistakes. The predator is gone, the environment is balanced, and the air is clear. Welcome to the first day of your absolute peace, the quietest and most magnificent superpower you will ever possess.